Hi, this is James Scott with Board on the Bayou. I had always thought if I was designing a great cooperative game, how would I design it? Well, it'd be cooperative, duh. But I mean, cooperative in the way that you're not just playing with other players, you're discussing and you're strategizing and you're really working together. You're just not just rolling and your turn. You're working together to try to beat the game. I also want it to be player count scalable. I want it to be play well as one player, two players, three. Hey, Adam showed up today. We're gonna play with 4 players, and it's you have the same experience. The replayability. You want the game to be, every time you play it, to be a little bit different. You don't want it to get stale. Being able to play different characters and every character have different play style. Adjustable difficulty. As you get better at the game, you can crank it up to make it harder. Or if you're more casual weekend, you can be able to do it easier. Well-made components. You want your components to be a good quality, not too great that makes the game expensive and out of reach. An easy setup, something that doesn't take an hour to set up. Something that's teachable and scalable. You want to be able to teach somebody the basics. They can learn how to play, and then after they got a few games under the belt, you can crank it up and make it more difficult and more complex. Well-written rule book with nice color rule book with some samples, maybe a glossary or an index. An unpredictable AI is nice, and great insert. Sorry, that's the only thing I don't like about this game. Now I'll go over them of what I just said. Cooperative. This game, Spirit Island, by R. Eric Russ, by Greater Than Games, 1 to 4 players. Takes about 90 to 120 minutes, but it's scalable, so it can vary a lot. We've had games that are closer than an hour. Ages 13 and up. BGG has it on there as 3.91 out of 5 on difficulty, and yes, but it's also I actually would say it's actually a 3 to a 4.5. There's so much different things on it. Going down my list, cooperative. In this game, you sit down and it's kind of like pandemics where you sit there and you plan out what you're going to do. But not only that, you got to discuss with the other players. You have to work together. You will lose this game if you just, I play and okay, your turn. What are you going to do? What are you doing? No, if you don't, you got to sit there and think about what you're going to do. You need to synergize with the other players. Also, too, it kind of helps if you play characters, especially starting out, that complement each other. Don't play a bunch of slow, late game characters. You want a little mixture in there. You want ones that can attack. You want ones that can defend. Player count scalable. Really neat design on the boards. What you do on these boards, there's these 4 boards that have a unique cutout design to them. So when you place them, they actually somewhat rotate in the different locations. So the way you place them, you could play this game 5 different times and using the same 4 boards, and it's going to be 4 different way the territories are split up. Replayability. There's so much different variables you can put in this game. You can add scenarios. You can add the kingdoms, which would add a variability. Then, like I said, the characters with different play styles. Pretty much every character that comes with the game, the spirits that you play, you are all unique. They're they have such a different play style, so you can find one that fits your play style. Do you like to be the defensive rock guy that just sits there and kind of spreads out and dominates and defends the board? Do you want to be the lightning guy that's real fast and can help out other players be fast? You want to be the green guy that of the plants that just spreads across the board and goes everywhere. The offensive, the one that causes fear. The adjustable difficulty. Again, there's so much different variabilities to it. You can, if you want to make the game a little harder, you can flip the boards over to the thematic side, and on that side, it ramps up the game. But also on the basic side of the boards, you can do different steps to crank it up. Do you want to with the what do you call it, the blight? How much blight you're going to put out there? You can adjust the amount of blight. You can adjust the amount of fear that you guys generate. The well-made components. The components in this game are really nice, simple components. They're the little plastic molded buildings and the little invaders, plus the little huts to symbolize the Shan, the people of the land. Really nicely made. Not overly. They could be really elaborate and probably would really crack up the price of this game, but they're really nice where you can sit there, as soon as you look at them, you know exactly what you're looking at. Easy setup on the board. When you set out and you put out the boards, you just simply put out the boards. The players pick their characters. On the board has the little icons. It tells you what to put on the boards. On the characters, on the back of the characters, it'll tell you how to set up your character, where to place your initial tokens, and then you flip them back over and place them down. You get your initial starting cards. Put out your deck of your powers. You're ready to go. It's real easy setup. Even the first time playing, it's real intuitive. Then the adjustability. I'm sorry. Oh, teachability and scalability. It's really easy to teach because of the fact that there's so much levels that you can do in the game. When you first play, they explain in there, look, the first time you play, just play with these characters. They even have some samples on how to basically work your characters, because as your characters go up, you can get new powers. They tell you, look, get these powers in order, so you don't have to learn the powers. You can first play through a couple times to get an idea how everything works, then go out more freeform. Also too is when you go to teach at, you can go, okay, we're just going to do with the basics. Or then later on, now you've learned the basics, now we're going to add in this. And now we're going to add in there's so much you can keep adding into the game and changing the game. It makes it really love. Well-written rule book. The rule book in this game is really beautiful, nice color pictures, lots of samples. The glossary in the back. A lot of times we'll sit there and go, well, we'll be thinking about a rule, and instead of looking at the rule, we just look up the definition of one of the words, and they'll tell you right there. They're really whoever did the rule book did a real good job on pretty much predicting on what most of your questions are going to be, and they sat there and had them pretty well laid out. Unpredictable AI. That's where this one is kind of, as you're playing, you're going to be flipping over the invaders deck, and you'll be flipping over a card, and it'll tell you on this turn, this is where they're going to explore. Next turn, if they explored in the jungle, the next turn they're going to build in the jungle. And then the following turn, they're going to exploit the jungle, and then that one goes away. There's only 4 cards in the first tier, so they're going to do one of each. So if you see the first 3, you already know what that 4th one's probably going to be. At the higher levels, as you go deeper, farther into the game, you'll notice that it does change up a bit. The insert. I'm sorry, a bunch of baggies does not equal an insert. They should have got with somebody who did at least some type of insert, but well, pretty much all they have in there is a bunch of baggies. So what we'll do is we'll go down and I'll show you on the table some of the basics of the game, of how it's played, and probably explain a little bit more of what I was talking about. All right, thank you. This is James Scott with Board on the Bayou. Remember to comment, like, and subscribe below. Thank you. All right, this is a general setup for a 4-player game. This way the boards are set up. As you can see, there are these weird shapes that interlock. But if you can possibly imagine, if this one was in this space, and then this one was here, you could almost create this whole center would be all fours. Whereas if this one was over here, this now would be in the center. So it adds a lot of variability to the game. Every time you play, you rearrange the boards as you want. After you set up the boards, depending on, this is the 4-player setup. 3-player, you use 3 boards, and these boards interlock in a different way. And then a 2-player is just using 2 boards, of course, and 1-player just the 1 board. Generally, solo, I think the best way to play solo is playing with 2 boards and playing with 2 of the spirits. In Spirit Island, what you're going to be doing is you are the spirits of the island trying to defend the Deshan, which are represented by these little wooden huts, from the invaders, which are represented by these little explorers, the houses, which are the village, and the cities. As they're going to explore, so at the beginning of the explorer's turn, they're going to do an explore action. You flip over the top card, which I'll show you. I'll show that board in a second. But let's say jungles. So you'd go and you take an explorer and put an explorer on every spot, every jungle that's adjacent or contains a town or village. So pretty much every one, you'd put one of these little explorers. And there we go. Another one over here. And you want to stand up. They do have a mechanic. The stuff does heal after you do damage to it at the end of the game, but end of the round. But cities have 3 hit points, towns have 2, explorers have 1. They got a neat little mechanic where that's 2. You lay it on the side, that means it's got 1. The cities, there are 3 hit points. You lay them this way with the 2 buildings showing. That means it's got 2 hit points left. You lay it the other side, that means it's got 1 hit point left, and of course removing when it's down. The Shan always will attack after, generally will always attack after the invaders attack. The invaders on their turn will first, they will ravage the land, and so they will attack. So they'll attack and do damage. If they wipe out, like they can, if they're on a spot with the Deshan, like this one here, possibly could kill this one, or like these would kill here. If they do enough damage, they also put blight on the land, which are these little tokens here. If all the blight is removed from the main board, then you lose. There's a bunch of different ways of winning and losing in this game. The scenario, you got the different scenarios you can play with, which will also change the win and loss records and the different stuff. And you also have the different kingdoms, which will add some variability. But after you set up the board, everybody will choose a character. lightning swift strike, shadows flicker like flame, and beautiful artwork. A double-sided, good cardboard stock. On the back will tell complexity, a little background on them, and it'll give you the setup. And as you can see, everyone has a little bit different playthrough. And what you're going to be doing is on your turn, after you do your setup on the back, you'll flip it over and you'll fill your tokens in, and then you'll, on your turn, you'll get to do, generally on most of them, let's see, a more simpler one. I say simple, but here's one of my favorite guys. He gets to choose one. You either do this action, or this action. Then you go to, and then you gather. So you can either reclaim all your cards. You can put a presence out, which I'll explain in a second. Gain a power card and add presence, or add presence 1 away and gain 2 energy. The energy you get is what you use to power your spells. After you've got your board, figure out who you're going to play, you get your 4 starting cards for your character. So if you're playing this guy, he has his 4 starting cards that have the same back that matches. All the cards have the cost up here and how much energy it's going to cost. It has the speed at which the spell goes off, which I'll explain a little bit later. So that's a fast spell. This one here is a slow one. And then these right here will give you elements, and there's a bunch of different elements. These are basically almost like a threshold, which I'll show you in a second on the board. And then it tells you, explain the targeting and what it does. So your board will be, you'll pick your color after you get your board, and you fill your tokens up. You're leaving the end space open, and in this case, this guy said to put it in the highest number wetland. So if he's on this board, he'll put in the highest number wetland for this guy. And then as you go, and when you do your actions, such as this one here, he can add a presence 1 away from a location he has a presence, or another one, and he can do it again. When you add your presence, what you do is you remove it from this board. You can be either one. This top row generally gives you more energy per turn. This bottom row generally gives you more cards you can play a turn. So let's say, and him, a good one to start is 1 and 1, so I'll have 2 energy, and I'll be able to play 2 cards. So then I'll go to place my tokens out on the board, and I can place it 1 away anywhere I want. Now, one of the problems are, let's say if I put here, and let's say I'll put over here. I have to worry about is when these guys attack, there's nothing here to defend. I know when they go to attack, if they attack this location, they will go ahead and they will put a blight on that location. And when they go put a blight on that location, it removes my presence. Yeah, because it was destroyed. When it's destroyed, it don't go back on the board, which is really nice. There is ways of getting back, but you just put them off to the side, and there's different ways of getting them back. Remember, I showed you those energies down at the bottom. Everybody has special powers, and they also have innate powers. The special powers will tell you, like in this case, his presence counts as a sacred site. Sacred sites have certain abilities, certain powers only work off of sacred sites, and those are generally more powerful. That's basically, a sacred site is just a 2 stacked. But in his case, anytime he's in a wetland, it counts as a sacred site. So there's a lot of cards that he can really get out there and get those cards really easy, such as it says here. This ability has to be from 1 space from one of his sacred sites. And if you look on here, it will show you it needs 1. This don't cost any power on this particular one, but it needs you to have had 1 yellow and 2 blue. And on his cards, I knew I grabbed the wrong ones. Bear with me a second. On his cards, generally they've got it pretty good where, if you notice, most of his cards that he plays are yellow and blues. So if he played 2 cards this turn, let's say he played these 2 cards right off the bat, he would have had 2 yellows and 2 blue. You don't spend these resources. Like I said, they're like a threshold. So this would allow him to do this top ability. He's 1 blue short, so if for some reason later on he got up here where he could do 3 and he gets this one, not only does he do all these abilities, but he'd also be able to do this ability, which in his case says instead of this, do that. Now, like I said, the timing on these, they have the turtles for the slow and the little red bird for the fast. What those mean is on the turns, there's a turn order where all the players are working together at the very beginning of the turn, and everybody's working simultaneously. So everybody kind of discusses during the spirit phase, what are you going to do? You really need to strategize in this game. Then goes the power phase of the fast powers. So where all the fast powers goes off. Then after that, you go into the blight effect, the fear effects, which I'll show in a little bit, the ravage phase, the build phase, the explore phase, which I'll explain again in a minute, and then the slow powers. So these slow powers usually are really nice, are a little bit better than the fast powers, but you have to kind of predict them ahead of time and figure out what the invaders are going to do in order to time them right. And then time passes. And how they figure all that out. All right, this is the other little board you have set off to the side. And then this board, when you first start the game, you would have flipped over to see where they explore, and then it goes into this build phase. As you destroy locations, well, let me go also in the setup. At the beginning of the game, when you set up, you did the blight on the island, but you also did put the blight on this card. This is like a little pool. When all the blight from this healthy island is done, you flip it over and then put more tokens on here, depending on what it says. When all these blights will go away, it'll say, if all the blights are removed, game over, you lose, generally. When the first time you play the game, they recommend just using the general one, which you put 5 blight per player. These add a difficulty and a variability. There's a handful of different type of island cards. And you also put down these fear tokens. You put down 4 fear tokens per player. It shows right here. As you destroy buildings, you put a fear in here. You destroy a city, you put 2 fear in there. Different powers may add more fear. Once I put all the fear into here, you slide it back up into the pool, and one of these fear cards come down here. And then during the fear phase, you'll flip it over, and it'll tell you if you're in tier 1, terror level 1, you do this. Terror level 2, in order to get to terror level 2, you go through the 3 cards, and then terror level 2 gets placed over here and lets you know you're in terror level 2. In terror level 1, it shows right here that you need to destroy all buildings, or all cities, all towns, and all explorers to win. Once you get to terror level 2, now the victory condition is destroy the cities and towns. You don't have to worry about the explorers. You get to another 3 fear cards, and now all you got to do to win is destroy all the cities. Get to the next 3 fear cards, it's automatic victory. So that's one of the victory conditions. And these all different vary. And like I said, you just go during the fear phase, you just go read through and activate what happens. Then after that, you have like I said, the blighted phase and the fear phase, and then the Say this is a couple turns in. These cards will be like this. And then this card will stay down, so you don't know where they're going to explore that turn. First you go, they ravage these lands. So the invaders will attack those lands. After they ravage the land, then they build. And then they build on all the different locations. Then you flip this one over and you put down explorers in the wetlands, that any wetland that's adjacent to any type of town or city, it explores. And you take these cards and you slide them down. And that's as simple as that, simplest way to explain it. The another thing they have in the game is these powers, which you'll have major powers, and you have minor powers. On your card, like I said, one of the things you could do is gain a power card. You choose. Whenever you go to gain a power card, you take the top 4 cards, decide which one you want to keep, and put the rest in the discard pile. It could be you could either take minor or major. It's up to you. But these are generally called 0, 1, or 2 power. They're the cheap, easy little minor powers, as you can imagine. So these are great for early game. But if you have one of the guys that generate energy real good, you may want to go for the major powers. The only difference between these is if you gain a major power, you have to discard one of your other cards you have, albeit a starter card, minor, or major power. So these add to your deck, these replace something in your deck. So, and that's pretty much about it. It's a really easy game to learn, but the complexity of it, of when these flip over and you put the scenarios in, I say that when they flip over, but when they flip over of what the next one's going to be, or and so like I said, in the first phase, you see I have a little 1 on them. These are the 4 different areas. After you think you've got the hang of the basic game, you can take the boards and flip them over and go to these beautiful areas. These are the artwork on this game is unbelievable. They have so much different art, and as you can see, they have a lot different. They have also these different symbols, which these different symbols are for if you get the expansion. They plan out ahead of time that once you get the expansion, where they're going to have. But this is definitely a lot more difficult. It's also a little harder to see. You may not realize that's a wetland. It's a little bit harder to see, or the desert's pretty easy. But it's definitely a way to add, so you can decide if you want the easier to see kind of beginning boards or the more advanced side. And that's the basics of Spirit Island.